Welcome to Healing the Tigress, a podcast of conversations and stories on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts. I'm Peggy, a perinatal mental health therapist.
And I'm Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist who is perinatal mental health certified. Both of us are Taiwanese American mothers who have lived experiences of postpartum depression and anxiety. It felt like we didn't see anyone who looked like us also struggling with their mental health in new motherhood. But we would go on to learn that it wasn't just us and that there was so much more to perinatal mental health.
So we created this podcast because we know that sharing these stories can begin to break the stigma of mental health in our community, and we want to help heal the inner tigress in all AAPI parents. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Healing the Tigress. We are incredibly excited to interview our guest today because we have been big fans of hers for a while. And while we've had several wonderful authors on our show, today's author is special because she is our first children's author that we've had the honor to speak with. And I still remember ordering her book for my daughter during the middle of the pandemic when Asian hate was on the rise, and she had just come out with her first book, Eyes That Kiss in the Corners.
Please join us in welcoming none other than Joanna Ho, the New York Times bestselling and award-winning author of many books for kids. She has received the Asian Pacific American Award for Children's Literature Honor, a Golden Kite Award, an Ezra Jack Keats Honor, and been finalist for the Kirkus Prize. Besides being a writer, Joanna is also an educator with a passion for anti-bias, anti-racism, and equity work. She holds a master's from the Principal Leadership Institute at Berkeley and has been an English teacher, a dean, the designer of an alternative to prison program, a creator of educator professional development, and a high school vice principal.
Wow, you do a lot. Since we are an AAPI podcast focused on maternal mental health, would you please kick us off just by sharing with our listeners about your cultural background and where you are in your motherhood journey?
Okay, yes, I would love to start off that way. I am Taiwanese. My parents, so my mom is from Taiwan. My dad and my stepdad, they're both from mainland China, and they grew up in Hong Kong. I was born in Minnesota, and I moved around the country a lot as a kid. But I think I identify the most with the Taiwanese side of my family. That's where I visited the most when I was young. Those are the family that are closest in proximity to me and the family that I know the best. So I lived in Taiwan also for like a year and a half after I graduated college. So I just feel really connected to that space and that land and the people and the food there.
We are your Taiwanese sisters, so we also share that same passion.
I love that.
Welcome.
In terms of my motherhood journey, I feel like that's I can be very clear about like how many kids I have and how old they are. I have 3 kids. One's in 5th grade, one's in 3rd grade. I have a newborn. He is almost 8 months old. He was born 2 months early. So I always feel like that's important now. I'm sure it won't be important in the future, but his age could be adjusted. He's supposed to be 2 months younger than he was, but we're so lucky that we got to know him earlier. I am also divorced, so I was a single mom. My older 2 kids are from my first marriage, and then the 3rd one is with my new husband. And so there's so many layers of how to talk about this space. I feel like as a mom, I'm constantly learning. So even though one's in 5th grade, it feels like every stage is a new stage, and I'm always learning about that stage. And then every kid is a different kid. And so I'm constantly learning about each kid. So it just feels like motherhood it's such a big, beautiful role that I constantly feel like I don't know what I'm doing. And I also feel like it's my favorite thing to be doing.
Oh, I love to hear that passion. And yeah, you're about to have a teenager and a middle schooler soon. So
I'm not ready.
Let's not say that. We just started the school year. Let's not say it that way. Well, I mean, talking about your eldest, right? You did share with us that when your eldest was born, you were looking for inclusive books to read to him. But then, you were very soon disappointed when you realized that there were just so few books with Asian or other BIPOC representation. And we've often said to some of our author guests, and other people have said, if you want it, but you don't see it, you don't have it, create it yourself, right?
Yeah.
So can you take us back to that moment when this fire sort of like kindled in you to think about writing children's books to fill
Yeah.
that void, even though you mentioned like you've never written one before.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am not a writer I think there's a lot of authors who grew up always wanting to be authors. I definitely was an avid reader. I have always loved reading. I've always loved books. I actually really, I mean, I was in like all the, I was in AP English. I did all the things, but I really did not feel confident as a writer. I remember in college, I would often go to the writing center. I'd have people look over my essays and like rewrite or reorganize. I actually left college feeling like, oh, I'm actually not a great writer. But which is but then I had anyway, so that's a whole other journey. It's not a way that I identified myself or a strength that I thought I particularly had. But I have always been a reader, and I've always been really passionate about equity and inclusion and social justice. And so I actually think for me, that's like the big umbrella for all the things that I do. Like that's why I went into education. I think that's a really huge driving, I think, inspiration or force or whatever you want to say in terms of like how I choose to parent my children. And at this time, so I had been an English teacher. I've always worked in Title I schools with communities of color. And so I've always been looking for books that where my students would hopefully be able to see themselves and hopefully see other people outside their community. As in the words of Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, we talk about books as windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. And so it was really similar when my son was born. I started to look for books. Actually, it was Christmas time. He was a few months old, and I had gotten it into my head that I would make an advent calendar of picture books for him, and we would unwrap one every day. And he's like 4 months old at this point. Like, and I was like on some sleep deprived kick of like, this is a great idea for a 4 month old. So anyway, so I got it into my head that I would make this calendar. So I started to Google picture books and then picture books. And so if we talk about like representation, at that time, if you look at the statistics for children's books, probably about 50% of books written for kids, that's anything from board books all the way up to young adult novels. 50% were written about white kids. Probably around 27% were written about animals. And then if you add up all the percentages of books about people of color, it's less than the percentage of books about animals. And that's a few years after my son was born. So when he was born, the numbers were even more dismal. Around that time is when like We Need Diverse Books started. And so I was just starting to realize, oh my gosh, like this is very similar to when I grew up, when I saw myself basically never, unless it was in really stereotypical books like what's the one where the kid falls into a well and Tiki
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 Tembo.
Tembo.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and nobody can say his name.
Yeah.
So
Book is
like
so
there's that.
traumatizing.
Yeah, I hate that book. So it's things like that, right? So I remember thinking, oh, I need to look for books. And then I was realizing there's very few to find. And I had this like moment. It can only be described as like really inspired, like almost religious. Like I think for me it was almost like a religious thing, like, whoa, like you should write books too. And I remember being like, like I don't know how to do that. Like I'm not a writer. I don't know how to write. I love reading. But I had this just moment of like, okay, well, you could sit here and complain about it, or you could at least try. So I feel like that was the moment that I was like, okay, like I'm gonna try. I have no idea what that means. I don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to get it published. But I started to like research and to learn and like throw myself into really, I mean, like taking classes, attending conferences, like reading tons and tons and tons, joining like different organizations to learn about this world of publishing that was so foreign to me. But that was like I was laying on a couch, I was like typing a blog post on my computer, and it was sort of like, stop complaining in your blog post. Like maybe you should do something instead of just complaining. And so that's sort of where it all started.
I love hearing about that journey, especially as somebody who has also been toying with writing a book for a while too. So maybe not a children's book, and I do think though that it does kind of start with reading like books of the genre maybe that you want to write about so you can sort of see how it comes and how people have different types of varieties in that genre too. So it's really inspiring to sort of hear your journey, because I think similarly, it's like I'm looking for something and I can't find it. And if I can't find it, then maybe I should create it.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe there is, a little kick or something that can get you started. So it's really cool to hear about that.
Thanks.
I love that it ties with your already grounded passion of like equity work, anti-bias, anti-racism, social justice, because I feel like even the existence of these books in itself is social justice. It's how powerful representation can be and how that is in itself a movement of anti-racism. I find it really fascinating though, because it was like, it came after becoming a mother yourself and being like, I had experienced not being represented in books and in places, but now I have to see my child experience that too. And something about that kind of fueled that religious awakening for you of no more repeating this,
Yeah.
I am not being seen in the books that I read. Like that statistic you quoted is like wild to me, that it's like, there's more animal characters than people of color in books. And I mean, your book was definitely one of the first that like Jasmine said that she ordered for her daughter. Like, I didn't have these growing up. I want my kid to see themselves in all of the books that we read. But it's really interesting. Your journey took a while. I mean, I'm not saying that you were slow, but it was like you have
No,
a
it
kid
does.
and then now 10 years, like your kid is like 10, over 10, and it's like this book came out post or in the pandemic, right? Like
2021. Yeah, the first
2021.
one.
Yeah. And now it's like it started of this some sort of wildfire. Now you're just writing. Now you are an author, even though you didn't see yourself as one. How long did that take? Like what was that like? Like how long did it take from the conception and then to this, like walk us through even just the poeticness of Eyes That Kiss in the Corner. I love those books. They're not just like, here is a thing. Da da da. It's like poetic. It's something that both
Thank
children and
you.
adults can enjoy. And if sometimes I'm like, this is healing for me when I read it. Tell us about that whole process from the
Yeah.
conception to the publishing of it.
Publishing is just like a space that takes a really long time if you want to go a traditional route. And so actually I think for me, let's see, from when I first started, I think I had this idea that I would start. But then, when did I really start writing? Wasn't until I was at the time working for a nonprofit that was designing an alternative to prison, like we were trying to create. I was designing like a healing, restorative educational space where men who were inside would serve in our program versus inside jails. And I was really unhappy. I really believed in the work I was doing. I was really unhappy. And I had this moment of another like moment where it was like, you should quit your job, which is like so wild because I feel like, especially being Asian, like I don't feel like we're not taught to do things unless we're really careful. We have it planned out. We know that, like, I was like, this is really stupid. I just had a baby and now I have this like, and I like had this moment. I quit my job. I had this feeling like on a Monday after I came home from like a winter holiday, and I gave them 1 week notice and I left like that Friday. And then 2 weeks later, I went to my first writing conference. And so it wasn't until a little bit after my son was born that I had this year where I was able to really like throw myself into writing, trying, because I hadn't really before that. And I wrote a lot. I like went to conferences. I wrote all these manuscripts. I did all these things. But first of all, it takes time to just learn the craft of writing. I think oftentimes people look at a picture book and they're like, I could do that. And you don't realize it's really hard. You have like 300 to 500, 600 words to tell a story, to have an emotional arc, to like blah, 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 all the things. So it's learning the craft. But then publishing itself is just incredibly slow. It's like several weeks or months before you hear back at all. If you're sending in a query to an agent, you might never hear back. Then if the agent, for me, I submitted to agents, I got some bites, nothing came of it. I like went to more conferences and then was asked by an agent who was my dream agent to resubmit some work that had, after I revised it. And so I signed on with an agent probably like a year and a half after I really started writing in earnest, which is fast. Like everyone's timeline is so different. I guess that's the other thing. I have a friend who started around the same time and she just signed with an agent like last year. a couple years ago, and that was like a 10-year journey for her. But like since then, like immediately after signing with an agent, she got like several book deals. For me, I signed with an agent and I had a bunch of books that were ready to go that she had put on submission. So there were like 4 books that were on submission for almost 2 years, so over a year and a half. One of them was Isaac Kiss in the Corners. One of them was a book that became On the Tip of a Wave, which was a story about Ai Weiwei. But they just kept getting rejected for over 2 years, rejections after rejections after rejections, until almost more than a year and a half later, the editor who ended up acquiring Isaac Kiss in the Corners sent this like beautiful email about how this was the book she needed and she loved all these things about it, blah, blah, blah. And so that was sort of the beginning. She went on to acquire like 8 more books for me. So it feels like, oh, suddenly you went from like nothing to like, at this point, it's like 12 or 13 books in the last 4
You
years.
have written a lot. Yeah, published a lot
Yeah,
in the
but a
last few
lot of
years.
that was because I was being rejected for so long and I was writing the whole time that I was not, having anything acquired. And then once someone acquired something, there were all these other books were almost like there, if not ready to go, they were there already in the works. So that's sort of, it's just publishing is long. Like from the acquisition of a picture book, it's typically 2 to 3 years before it's even published. So I said Quiz in the Corners was acquired in 2018 and then published in 2021.
It's always kind of fascinating to me to hear about the behind the scenes with book stuff because, like, people are like, "Oh, wow, you must be so famous and you have so many things going on." But like, really, there's so much like behind the scenes going on, and like you said, that rejection after rejection, and it's not like an instant guarantee kind of thing. But I mean, we love your books, and it's been really cool seeing you sort of progress and grow and things coming out. So. And the other thing too is like, I mean, the stuff you've kind of shared with us in our pre-interview that I never would have guessed that your first book was published during one of the hardest times in your life. You mentioned that was when you were going through a divorce. It was during the pandemic. You had 2 kids, you were working as a vice principal of a high school. Like, what helped you mentally and just sort of like being like superwoman kind of through this? What helped you get through this difficult time in your life?
I think I feel like the answer always comes back to community. Like it's a period of time. Like it's hard to overstate like how difficult that period of time was for me personally. Like I don't know if you know anyone who's in education, like working through the pandemic was like the hell years of being a teacher or an administrator at school. That on top of, obviously going through divorce is really hard. Going through divorce during the pandemic where everything was, just everything compounding. Then trying to homeschool my kids because they also weren't in school, like on top of everything. But there's multiple ways to answer that. One is that like the book thing, having a book come out, like I couldn't go on tour, I couldn't do school visits, I couldn't. So anything that was happening with the books was like this thing that felt like it was happening in the ether of the world. Like I would see it on social media. Oh, it hit the New York Times bestseller list. Oh my gosh, so cool. But I never even met a reader. I never got to visit a school. It was just this thing that happened that was like, oh, cool, like shots of good news in my email inbox or on my text. But life was lifing in a real way that felt completely disconnected to this like book thing that was happening. And so for me, like, I actually think in that period, because of the context of this podcast, I feel like it's relevant to share, like, I became so much closer to my mom during that period. Historically, I think like very many stereotypical, like first daughter of immigrants, Asian family have a lot of like of those very stereotypical experiences, like did not feel connected to her, had a rocky relationship, like feels like she didn't understand, she didn't want me to be a teacher, like all of the things. But she also was a single mom. She got divorced around the same age that I got divorced. She is also now remarried. My stepdad is amazing. And I really looked at her. She also lives close. And so she was able to just provide a lot of support in that way. But I think that's one of the biggest silver linings, if you will, is like one of the biggest gifts of that period of time is I feel like we've talked about it since, like she was so much more patient. She knew exactly what I was going through. And I, for the first time, started to ask and really see and understand what she had gone through when I was a kid. And I was able to like understand how much she protected us from and what she went through, and like how she shielded my brother and I from that process of pain in her life. Like we just had no idea, we were kids, you know? So I feel like I gained like so much appreciation for her. And at the same time, she was so much more patient with me and less critical. Just like so nice during that time. But like, if you had told me in high school that there would be a time when my mom and I would like get along so well, I wouldn't have believed you. But that's really something that came out of that. And so she helped take care of my kids. Like I just was so grateful. She'd like come and fill my refrigerator with food. She would come over and like clean my kitchen, even though her back was injured. It's like so many like very Asian mom things to do. And I was so things were so hard that like every little thing was such a gift, and I was so grateful. And like, I mean, just as a sign of like how much that relationship has progressed, like she and my stepdad have been living with me for the last year because their place is being remodeled.
Mm.
And that like in previous times would have been like unthinkable. And it's been also a gift to like have them here and see my kids with them. And so I really think it's like, to answer your question, it's just community, like having good friends, having people that I could really lean on, cry to, laugh with, to just help like carry all these things that felt like impossible to carry on my own.
It's like,
Yeah.
how are we seeking community? And it's so beautiful that it was someone you never really would have thought was going to be your rock and guide you through it. And now as a mother, I'm sure you see, like, if I see my child going through something that I know exactly what that feels like, do everything in my power to be there for them. And that is such a beautiful healing moment for both of you, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, I think it really was. It's sort of this idea that community is, it's like revolution, it's resistance, it's like change, it's all the things that we need. We need each other. We need to help each other hold and laugh and be joyful and cry, you know, all the things, but we can only do that together. And the more we like break bread together, the more we can talk together, the more we can connect and build bridges, like the stronger we are as a whole, I think.
Yeah. We've had a few episodes now where I'm beginning to see more and more of these values that are really inherent in our culture. And we just live in a Western society that has devalued community so much, even in this concept when it comes to wellness of like self-care. And I recently saw a post where it's like, hey, maybe self-care doesn't work for the BIPOC community because we come from collectivist cultures where community is where we find our healing. And so I love that you mentioned that community is revolutionary. And I don't think even purely anthropologically, we weren't meant to be lone wolves and go through it
Yeah.
all by ourselves either.
I mean, I think motherhood really just sort of opened my eyes, at least, to how important that was. Because for me, like struggling through mental health during, my postpartum months and stuff was all of a sudden like, wow, like I really can't do this by myself. And there's no shame in that. Like there really isn't. We weren't meant to do this alone. And I think the more we embrace that, the easier it kind of gets to lean into each other and what beautiful results come of letting each other lean on each other and stuff. So yeah, same thing as I do feel like I am starting to see like our our Asianness and the collectiveness like mindset, and how can we like balance that out a little bit? Like let's rebalance that with our Western upbringing, right? Like it's not all bad. We need to take the certain parts of our culture and weave it into what we have here. And that can be a little bit hard, I think, for where we are right now, but I don't think it's impossible. I think people are really starting to see kind of why we need that. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that so much.
During this period, you spent, I don't know how long, maybe you can paint a picture for us, but you spent some time as a single mother, as did your mom. And you had shared that it was actually really great. And I imagine that some folks, when they are going through separations or divorces, especially as mothers who are carrying so much, there is this fear of like, how do I do it, quote unquote, alone? One of our first seasons, one of our first guests in our first seasons was a young single mom, and how she kind of found herself through that as well. What was that period of your life like?
I mean, honestly, I feel like I like toyed with the idea for divorce. I was married for 9 years, and I think for about 5 of them, I like fantasized about divorce. So I felt like and since actually my first son, after my first kid was born, was when like things became very clear. I was really unhappy. It was really clearly not a partnership in any way, shape, or form. And it's to the idea that you kind of touched on, Jasmine, this idea that like when we become mothers, I think so many of us are used to overperforming or like overdoing. Like we just function because we have to function at a particular, and you like just take on and you take on and you take on. And I feel like for me too, motherhood was like a space where I was like, oh, like there's actually a limit here, and I can't do everything even a little bit. Like I feel like it was a space where I hit a wall, and that happened sort of in this period. But like up until that point, I feel like I was in this period of like just intense darkness where I did not know, I could not see like life being happy at all. I felt like I was either trapped in a marriage where it was just like darkness forever if I stayed here, but also the idea of like getting a divorce and like who knows what that means. When you're like facing that down, that felt like this was another long road of darkness, and it just felt like I had no good options. And when I finally like got to a space where for me, I prayed about it a lot for years and years and years, and I feel like and now looking back, I like knew the decision. I just didn't want to make that choice. And then when I finally did, it felt so liberating. So even though the process of divorce was truly hell, like I don't know how else to explain that, when it finally finished, it really felt like I walked out of the darkness and I felt so proud. I just like was on a real kick for a while about like really destigmatizing single moms. Like single moms, like whether you made the choice to become single or someone made that for you, they speaking not to like toot my own horn, but this is sort of like where I felt it was sort of like, this is like one of the hardest choices you can make. And you have to like, there's so many unknowns. You have to show, I just feel like I was so proud. Like I showed so much. I'd be like, that was really brave of me. Like I didn't, choosing to not see my kids every day is the worst choice a mom could make. Literally the worst. But like knowing that that was what's better for me, what was better for them, like choosing myself, choosing my joy, choosing the future, like walking into a complete unknown. For me, like I did everything in my marriage. Like my ex-husband, like he didn't have a job, like he didn't do anything. So the financial piece was always mine to bear. So that part wasn't as much of a worry because I still had my job. I was still doing the things. So it really felt like I made this choice. I knew the strength that it took to go through this process. And then I felt like when that thing finished, I really felt like I walked into the light. Like it was like, whoa, life is light. And so that period of like single motherhood was like, it felt like freedom. It was like me getting to be myself with my kids, like me getting to rediscover all the parts of myself that I had like hidden or that had shrunk, that I had made small in some way. It was like me rediscovering joy and me rediscovering all these relationships that had, I think, frayed, because I think sometimes when you are in an unhappy marriage, you shrink, and then the people around you don't know what to do and they don't know how to connect. And so it was me like refinding people, and like it really was just a joyful period of freedom because of the way that my marriage was. It didn't feel like I was taking on extra burdens. It felt like I released a lot and that I was doing all the same things, but this time without like a shadow over me. It truly was like this beautiful period of like rediscovery, and just like honestly, like I had also quit my job as a vice principal. I was like writing full time. So that was really scary, but it was also, I was doing things that I loved. I had a lot more time with my kids. So it felt like life was really like I was getting another chance at doing all these things that I really, really love.
Felt like you took a lot of risks, right? Like risks in the sense that like our Asian upbringing would be like, no, like lean in towards safety,
Yes.
lean in towards stability, like don't rock the boat, save face, like what would people say? But you knew that in the end, like that just meant a really, really dark, long road, and you didn't want to live like that.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. You were very brave to take that step and think about sometimes what's best for you is what's best for your kids.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it became, like, really clear, like, if I'm, like, desperately unhappy, it's gonna impact my kids, you know? And honestly, like, I think it was helpful for me to look at my mom and be like, "She did it. She didn't how she hates when I share this, but I think for me, it's like a sign of her strength. Like she never even graduated college and she was a single mom. She didn't have, like, she'd never worked. I had a career, I had degrees, like I had a lot more options than her, but she hustled and she built herself a little world of like, she's doing great. But it was so helpful to be like, she did this, like she went through this and she's so much happier, to your point of like how I like to be able to look at someone in my own family and to know that like the outcome was better, to know like I'm so grateful as her child that that was the path she chose. That was really helpful for me in terms of like giving me strength to make those choices.
I love that. It makes me think of how much we can draw from our ancestor. And I know your mom is your mom, not like a distant ancestor, but the strength of our ancestors, and it just had this image of just like on her shoulders, or like she forged through and made a path, right? Not that she was like, and I'm gonna do this so that one day you get divorced.
Yeah.
It's like I'm gonna
So
have
you
the
can
strength,
follow in my tracks.
right? But it's more like it's more about the strength that she brought through, that then she's like, and this is the strength that I bestow on you as well
Yeah.
through whatever life throws you. I love this continuing connection to how much your mom was so pivotal
Yeah.
in that, and
Yeah.
especially in motherhood, right? It's not until you had yourself kind of ripped open in this space of motherhood, because it wasn't until motherhood that you were like, this partnership isn't working, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and like how you said that it really helped to have a model or someone to look to. And in that sense, I think that's why like we started this podcast is we needed to talk to people that we felt like we could relate to. And a lot of that is relating to like this is someone that looks like me that's going through this, and like I don't have to be the only one going through this or feeling like I'm so alone or lost in it. And I
Yeah.
think so it's great. I think that you've been open about sharing these things. I think it probably totally helps somebody out there think that like wow, like she can do it and like I can find happiness and I can find strength too. So, thank you for sharing that.
Thanks. Well, thank you for creating a space where people, I feel like in our culture, so much is what you were saying is like don't say anything publicly, like hide, save face, like whatever that means. Like so many things that have shame attached to them should not be shameful. Like it's life and, our humanity, and talking about it and having safe spaces to share about it, I feel like destigmatizes so many things that shouldn't have stigma attached at all.
Mhm.
Yep, totally.
And builds community.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding.
Draw it all back together. And while you had a really freeing, joy-filled single motherhood, and not that people need to be partnered to find joy, there's now this other side where you are happily remarried. And I think sometimes again there's this people have a fear of like what's next. Either we, will I find love again, or do you even need to, right?
Yeah.
But I'd love to hear about how you reconnected with, that story. Let's get into the story of your reconnection with your husband.
Sure. Okay. Well, first I'll start by saying I think that me even being open to dating at all, or to like even considering like even considering the idea of a partner, came from me realizing like I actually would love my kids to see an example of a really healthy, loving relationship. Just sort of knowing like our kids will grow up modeling or looking for what they know in their lives. And so on one hand, I'm like very happy for them to have just like a strong single mom as their model. I'm also was think, oh, I actually like there's things turns out I can't provide all by myself. And I really was like, I want them to know what that looks like. I want them, if they choose to be partnered, I want them to find a partnership that's healthy, that's loving, that's partnered, you know. And so I think that was like the first thing that was like, oh, maybe you should consider opening yourself up to this idea. And then that from there like led to me being like, okay, if I'm really honest, I would actually love to know what that's like to be in a really loving, healthy partnership. Like I have so many examples of friends, family that I see, and it's beautiful. And so then I think it became a space of like wrestling internally of like, you can be a strong single mom, you don't need a man, to like actually like it would also be really beautiful to experience that on my own. So I feel like it was a progression for me to get to a space to be open. I have two friends, a friend and a cousin who uh got on dating apps and made profiles for me because I was like, nope, I'm
That's
not
how it
doing
starts.
that. I know. And then like one of the friends, they literally like waited until I was with some other friends and they had like a Zoom date with wine while they made my profiles for me. Like they legit made the whole thing. And then I wouldn't go on. I would just be like, nope, 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 nope. And it was like homework. Every day they'd be like, did you go on? I'd be like, no. And then like, and if we were writing together at this time, she's also an author, and she would just be like, give me your phone. So I'd like hand her my phone, like so guay, like, okay. And then she would swipe for me. And then she'd be like, okay, I'm done. I'd be like, okay, thank you. That's kind of how that went. I really did not love that. So at some point I was like, okay, like I'm done with this. Then I like deleted all my profiles because at some point I was just like, you moved away. Nobody's swiping for me. Like, this is so stupid. So those same conniving people who created the profile.
I hope they're listening to this episode.
Oh, they know. They're very proud. They're all like my worlds all started to like connect a little bit. So really long story short is my now husband is someone that I've known since 7th grade. And he was really cool and I was not cool. I had big glasses. I was voted most scholarly every year of middle school. Go Joanna. I was that really dorky girl. And he was like, here, he's walking in right now. So he's nodding his head like, nah. He was so cool. I remember him walking around holding hands with other cool people because they were cool and only cool middle schoolers like date each other, like bleh, whatever. So I was not cool. We were on the same track team. He does not remember that I was on the track team. We were in Japanese class together, like all through middle school. Fast forward, like senior year, our friend groups became really close. So like we spent a lot of time together senior year. We like went to like our friends went to LA on a trip. We like obviously hung out a lot on the weekends. After we graduated, like our giant friend group went to Europe together. We had a friend who is from there, so we like stayed at her apartment. But we were always just friends. And then we lost touch, you know, during college, and then we didn't see each other again until our friends got together for boba like a couple years ago, like in 2023, and then we didn't see each other again. And then our friend had another high school friend had a party, like a Christmas party at our house, and then we like got together again for boba. And then at this point, like everyone is texting me like, do you want me to suddenly have something come up so you could like be with Chris alone? And I'd be like, no, you better come with your whole family. Like we were really dodo. And so there was a lot of like, and then my friends and my cousins were connecting because they all started to know each other over the years. And finally they like eventually went on our first date. And like the rest is a little bit history from there. But there was like a lot of back chatter, like like my cousin texting my friend like, don't go to dinner tonight, like make sure. Or they like went, and one time they knew we were going to go to a Warriors game, so they also went to the Warriors game and they sat in the top floor so they could spy on us from the upper seats and take pictures of our dates. Like they were so ridiculous. But now they're like, we did that. So anyways, we reconnected. And we had a baby. We got married. It was like a really fast whirlwind, like really beautiful, unexpected year. And so it's just one of those things where like almost every day we'll like be going to sleep and be like, can you believe that we're dating? And then it'll be like, we're not dating anymore. We're married now. Can you believe we're married? Like, did high school you think that this was going to be where we ended up one day? And it'd be like, no, but I was hoping it would, or something like that. Like so sweet things like that. So it's just another chapter that felt like so unexpected. And like, obviously, we're both really grateful.
That's what the premise, well, not the premise, but inspiration behind becoming Boba was, right?
No,
That's what.
actually,
No,
becoming
it
Boba
wasn't.
came. That's why it's funny because I wrote that book before we ever had reconnected over Boba. And I wrote about my high school friends, and I like even put in like illustrator's notes for specific boba places that I loved before we had ever even reconnected. So then when we did reconnect over boba and then the book came out, I was like, oh, now boba's part of our story. But I was like, I didn't even know when I wrote that book.
You manifested it.
Yeah.
Yes, it was meant to
Yeah.
be.
It
Yes.
feels like that a little. So we feel really happy. And we have a baby and he's the best. So really glad.
I give you props for like starting that all over again with
Yeah.
a newborn in like 10 years.
I'm very curious with this new baby and with a new partner, does it feel so much more different postpartum and all of it?
My gosh, I like love that question. I think about that a lot actually. I think all of it feels like a gift. It feels like a gift to be able to do motherhood with someone who's like a partner. I mean, it's like so many little things that add up to big things. Like I don't have to ask for things. He like gets up in the middle of the night. Like there's so many ways that this journey, and there's lots of reasons for that. Like I work from home now. I don't have to go in to be an administrator or teacher at a school. Like my other two kids went to daycare at 8 weeks. I had to go back to work because I was the only breadwinner, like, but just like feeling like I have someone who I do things with is like, it's made this part of the journey, even though I'm 10 years older and I feel 10 years older, it feels just like a really, I won't say like a fun journey. It's like a learning journey. Like there's ways that we are learning to come together as parents. Like I spent so many years in education. I have two kids. It's his first kid. And we were raised in a particular way that I think maybe so many of us share similarly, which is really different than how I'm raising the kids. And so it's actually feels really beautiful that we don't agree all the time. It's nice to have someone to push my thinking and who is thinking I'm pushing and to like grow together. That I think that actually, it's not always easy, but I really, really am grateful for that.
That sounds like a healthy relationship because I'm just saying, it's like you can't expect a relationship to always be like roses and sunshine, right? Like there has to be there is going to be conflict, but the thing is like, how do you resolve that conflict? And so the way you're describing it right now, it sounds like you welcome those challenges because you know that you guys are going to work through it together. And that's the beauty of it, right? That's a good healthy relationship. So I'm really happy you found that. Like it's like a really nice, like, I mean, the story's not over, but it's like a
Yeah.
nice little fairy tale ending in a way.
Yeah.
In a way. Yeah. Well, I'm going to switch gears and talk about a slightly different book. You actually wrote a young adult book in 2023 called The Silence That Binds Us. And I recently read this too. There are a lot of themes in there around like youth mental health. There was a little segment about a teen suicide, which is, I feel like, really big on a lot of our minds these days. There's themes about anti-racism and what can you do. And as an Asian American mother, you have tweens. Now you also have an infant. What are kind of the most important messages that you hope to pass down to your kids as well as the AAPI youth of today?
Gosh, I mean, so much are covered in. I mean, I actually think if you look at all my books, like the young adult novel uh, is the similar in terms of, even though it's written for an older audience, if you look at all my books as a whole, there's often like there are like common themes. And it's not intentional, but I think oftentimes as writers we'll say like, we don't realize that we're actually just re-exploring the same things. And for me, a lot of the similar things are kind of how we started this conversation, this idea of knowing our history and like knowing the shoulders we stand on. So whether that's in this book or whether that's We Who Produce Pearls, which is a picture book that I feel really proud of, or whether that's our personal family relationships, like knowing where we come from and being really proud of that, and drawing so much strength and power from that is one. I just feel like, and so we'll come back to that in a second. I think the other part is like understanding our own power in the world, like our ability to create change. And then I think part of that, the next part of it is also just like recognizing that we need to work in solidarity with other people. And I think for us as Asians in America, particularly, especially when we are never taught our history, we don't know so much of our roots, even here in this country, even if we immigrated in the last couple generations, like that history of Asians in America is still our history. And I feel like when we don't know that history, it's so much easier to fall victim to like ideals of white supremacy and to play into that role, when we really need to be working together with each other and then across other groups. And I think understanding our history and our collective history and how connected we always have been helps us to do that. So I guess like to answer your question, like I hope our kids know that they have power to create change. I hope they're always critical of what they learn and that they look at it and understand through a lens of solidarity, and that they will always work in solidarity and in community to create the change that they need and that they can be. I think so many of my books, ultimately, even I Set Kiss in the Corners, like there's a reason it says that she's a revolution. Because like that book isn't just about like, we're beautiful, even though we are, you know, that book is about like, we have power to create change if we understand the systems that made us feel like we weren't beautiful. Like, because that there are systems in place that made us feel that way and that portrayed our eyes in a certain way, but we are a revolution. And so I really hope that that's what young readers or grown-ups like take away when they read my books.
It's really nice to hear kind of your thought process behind all of that. Because, yeah, when you say that, I do see the themes like tying together. We Who Produce Pearls was a very beautiful book as well. I really loved it. And also, I think, was there another one? Is it Say My Name? Or
Say My Name. That's the one about just like names and the history
yeah,
behind our names, you know?
yes.
Yeah.
And I thought that
Yeah.
one was also very special. I mean, you talk about like your own name as well as just like different across like the AAPI spectrum, right? Like what is in a name? Why is it this way? So I love all your books, and I see now. I see this common overarching umbrella theme of that. And I think that's beautiful. Is there anything on mental health that you would wish to pass on to your kids?
Yeah, I mean, it's something like my kids are both in therapy. Like, it's something that is so important to me. Like, I want them, I mean, I feel like I do the best I can at home. We talk about our feelings, we resolve things together, we are really restorative. And I want them to know that they have safe places to talk about things, that there's no bad feelings, that everything is part of being human. And it's just about how we navigate those feelings. There's nothing shameful about having anxiety, for example. Like both my kids have ADHD and they have anxiety. And like I share that because I just don't, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's the way that they were born. It's like their genetics. And like they know ADHD is a superpower, for example. Anxiety is something that we deal with and we talk about. And like, for example, Inside Out 2 was like such a gift. Like they'll be like, okay, I'm gonna tell that voice to sit down and take their anxiety tea. And then they're like, they think they're so funny. But I think like when we normalize talking about mental health, it's that thing about stigma. Like I just don't want them to feel any stigma about having and wrestling with any kinds of feelings or things that they might be dealing with. We're all going to go through all the things at some point, and I just wish that they would know that there are safe places for them. I hope I'm a safe place, but I hope that I can also help them find safe places because I won't be with them all the time.
Yeah.
I feel like your books are a tool for the young Asian American Pacific Islander kids for that, of the normalizing. This is how we say our name and we honor that, or this is how we look. And I think that it's more than just a beautiful book with beautiful writing, it is a revolutionary tool. I imagine that's what you were hoping it to be, and it is really coming across more and more that you are equipping the future generation of API youth and more to find themselves and know themselves in all the work that you're doing.
Okay, one more thought, and I'm thinking about the science that binds us too. But I just feel like in the silence that binds us, I think there's like two things. One is just like this idea that Danny, who's the older brother, who ends up dying by suicide, like there's so much that he's silent about. And I think in our communities specifically, like we're not historically, I do really think our generation is like trying to do things differently. But like we're taught to be silent about so many things. And I guess I think what I'm saying so much to our community is wake up and like speak up, whether that's about how you feel, whether that's about injustice, like all the things. I think that our silence maybe served us at some point in time. But if you look at the grand scheme of who we were in our ancestral homelands, who we were historically here, we aren't actually a silent people, and we're not a small people, and silence is serving literally none of us. So I just hope that people know that they can speak out. And I also hope that they know they can be critical of the ways that we're portrayed in popular media, of the ways that like their classmates might come at them or say things even not in intentionally antagonistic ways. I hope, to your point about books, whether it's my books or other people's books, like all the books, all the stories, our parenting, I hope that we are giving them the tools they have to be critical so that they're not internalizing so many of the messages I know many of us internalized as kids. We just didn't have the tools to think any differently than what we were given.
I'm so glad you addressed that because teen suicide is one of those big things now that I feel like I think about a lot, just with AI, with social media, with all these things, the rise of like mental health crises amongst young people. To add on another layer, racism, anti-racism is like helping mental health, like that is, it's inextricably tied together. What was, I think it was Divya in one of our other episodes was saying like, no, like we can't just be like one slide. We can't have one slide talking about racism with maternal mental health. Maternal mental health is the whole thing. Like race is so tied. Everything is tied, right? Being born brown, being born Asian, being born, person of color, it's already a risk factor because of all the racism. So, you saying all this, I think it kind of ties that all together.
I mean, that's exactly why we've created this is we can't be silent anymore. And that's one of the first things you learn in like suicide crisis intervention training is as a licensed therapist is you ask someone and you name it. You say, "Are you feeling suicidal?" Because everyone's so afraid. Everyone's so
Yeah.
afraid of saying the things or talking about the things. But actually the talking about it is what will help and what will decrease the risk of those things happening. Oh my goodness, Joanna, you have such an impressive resume, and it just seems like you have been able to do it all from writing books, advocacy work, raising a baby, and older children, and more. You just seem like you have so much energy and fire, and we can see it even today in this episode. Can you tell us what your secret is? Or what's going on behind the scenes to make this all happen?
I don't know. I think so much is honestly, I don't know. I'm tired. I think it's community. I also think that just, I don't know if you've ever done your Myers Briggs. I know it's like debunked science or whatever, but I really love Myers Briggs. I am an INFJ. But I really, for me, it's like, for better or for worse, because I don't know that it's always better. I feel like I've always been very motivated by desire to create positive change. Like I'm very motivated by injustice, by racism. I would say motivated to fight and to combat and to change those things. And I think that when I see like what's happening in the world, it's very hard to go into a bubble. Like I am not happy or fulfilled unless I feel like I'm trying at least to do something. And so it almost feels like it's not me that has all this energy. It's more just like it feels like you have to do it. You know, it feels like it's something I have to do, and like I feel really fortunate that like I've been able to do things, find a path eventually of doing things in a way that really aligns with like things that I love to do. And then it's just to what we said before, like I have a lot of community and family and friends who are around me who provide so much support so that I can do the things that I'm doing, you know? I feel like life has all these phases. So if you like look at anyone's life and put it over time, it sounds like people have done a lot of amazing things, but it's been a lot of years to do things in different phases. So I think that was really helpful advice for me when I first became a mom. That like I didn't love the idea of women can do it all. And I also don't love the idea of like actually we can't. And I think it sort of lives somewhere in between where we can, it just not all at the same time. And I really that was really helpful for me to be like, oh, it doesn't have to be in this season. It could be in another season. Like we can do all the things. We don't have to give up who we are to be moms. We get to be ourselves and be moms. And actually, that's better for our kids. We just need to remove the pressure that we have to do it all right now when we're not sleeping at night, for example, you know?
I think the course of your journey has really, like, the way you're saying this now, I just feel like there's so much backing that up. Like, you've been through so much and you're able to say this. And it's still very, like, I think it's still very, like, in essence, very humble to say all this that, like, I am tired. Like, look behind the scenes, like, this is what it's like, that's the reality of it. But, like, it wasn't accomplished in one day, right? And you can take it one step at a time. And I think that's what people need to be reminded of to hear about. Yeah.
I also love that there's this common thread. A lot of your answers have been community. And I think that is our strength as the AAPI community is this value that we do things in community. One of the things I always used to love learning about just Chinese names is there's a reason why your last name goes first. The second character is the joined name that you share with your siblings or your generation. And only the last one is what's you, because it symbolizes what comes first is the family or the community, the collective, then your generation or whatever. But it's really, there is so much power. And even in your stories, clearly your community, your conniving friends that are spying on your dates and stuff, they
I can't even take credit for that.
you have such a great community and they've really held you through it all. And I almost feel like even just right now with everything going on in our world, that there is almost like this need out even outside of the AAPI community to find community and to stay connected. We
100%.
need to stay connected.
Yeah. Thank you all for the work you're doing, though. I just feel like there's so many ways for us to speak out and to have our voices be effective in the world. And so I always feel incredibly inspired when I see particularly people in the Asian community doing it. Feels so strengthening, I think, for all of
Thank
us.
you. That's really nice to hear. I mean, I feel like the same thing where you're saying that, like, you have this sort of drive that helps you, push through and do all these things that you're doing, and that's kind of your higher sense of purpose that you're chasing, right? And I same thing with us is like I feel like, we don't get paid for this podcast, and we have other things we're juggling outside this, but we still love doing this because I feel like there's just so much purpose and, like, passion behind it because of the higher purpose of it. And so, yeah, it's that's why we love guests, like talking to guests like you. We're doing this common work kind of in a way. Yeah. And so, in the spirit of healing your inner tigress, we always end our episodes with this note where we ask our guests to reflect back on maybe one of the hardest times that they've had. And I don't know what part of your journey you might consider the deepest, darkest time, but what would, like, present day Joanna go back and tell that past version of you to heal that inner tigress?
I think it's just like, and this is going to be so stupid, but honestly, I feel like I've had so many conversations lately with women who are in the middle of divorce. And I just like keep saying like it gets better. Like at every moment of like intense darkness is temporary. And I think that goes for suicidal like ideation, where it's like, I can't remember the phrase. It's like there's, you don't want a permanent solution to something that is a temporary problem, and to remember like our lives, they go in waves. And truly, like, I feel like my heart in all of the darkest times, hardest times, like my heart was stretched so that it has a greater capacity for joy and love. And so in those moments when it feels so dark, just to remember like that light and that joy and the love is coming, and you will have a greater capacity to hold all those and feel all those. I didn't believe it when people told me at the time, and now I'm the person like telling people it gets better. Like, you will walk into the light. So like, hang in there.
That is a beautiful message. That is really, really, really beautiful. Thank you. Joanna, we could talk to you forever, but I know we have limited time, and we want our listeners to be able to find you if they don't already know you, but I'm sure many of them already do. So where can listeners find more of you and your work and what you're up to?
Yeah. So my website is joannahowrites.com. And then I'm most active on Instagram. So that's also just at Joanna Ho Writes, is where I'll probably post more updates on like books and things that are coming. I would also say you can follow my newsletter. I send out like maybe 2 or 3 a year, so I won't spam but there will be just like more personal things in there that I don't maybe share on Instagram. And then if you want to find my books, would encourage people to go to like their local indie bookstores to buy books.
And you also have a podcast?
Oh, I also have a podcast. Thank you for reminding me. It's called Kidlet Happy Hour. So anyone who really loves storytelling, it's just another author friend of mine. We interview people in publishing and we talk about storytelling. So if that's something that interests you, you can check it out.
We will definitely link all those in our show. Let's go and support your local bookstores. Joanna actually helped me learn that I had one in my neighborhood that I didn't even know about. So I went and picked up one of her books the other day at our local bookstore. So yeah, thank you so much for your time,
Thank you so
Joanna.
much for having me.
We want to thank you deeply for tuning into this episode of Healing the Tigress. The more we share these stories, the more we can help our AAPI mothers and partners. If you enjoyed this episode and our mission, you can help us out in the following ways. Follow our show wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and/or a review, and share our podcast with a friend.
We also encourage you to follow us on Instagram at Healing the Tigress, where we hope to build a community of healing tigresses and give you updates on what's coming. And if you want more bonus episodes, please check out our show notes for how to subscribe to our exclusive content. Or you can also head over to our Buzzsprout page at healingthetigress.buzzsprout.com. We are not for profit. We are here to help our community, but any support you give us is so deeply appreciated. Above all, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here.
Healing the Tigress is produced and edited by Peggy and Jasmine.
Music for this show is remixed by Dr. Tony Huynh of Tony Mixes.
Our intro music is a cover of You and Me by Z Avi, played by our co-host Peggy.
Our outro music is a cover of Green Island Serenade, played by Jasmine's sister.
Cover art design is by Dr. Angela Chung.